Oh! Oh my god!
In the history of FTO speed solving, at any point in time, there was always a significant time barrier to be broken. Originally for me, that was the 1 minute barrier, and after achieving that, it was then the 30-second mark. But about a year later, that goal completely changed. It was Dan Pashchikov who brought a new barrier within our sights, 20 seconds. By achieving the first ever sub-20 single in June of 2020, it became the most coveted result to achieve within solving. So much so that other potential future barriers weren't really even being considered. But incredibly, Dan has done it again. He has broken through a barrier that wasn't even in our wildest visions, 15 seconds. On November 20th, 2020, Dan achieved a 14.64 single solve on the face-turning octahedron. This is absolutely unprecedented. It has honestly completely changed the way I think about FTO solving, and what future solve times could become. The solve is an incredible example of skill, luck, and precision, and I will be going over the full reconstruction right now. One thing to note is that Dan uses the Dian Cheng color scheme, which I do not have. This one here is still relatively similar. These 5 colors here are the same. The difference is that this would be gray, this would be purple, and this would be yellow. So that is something to note. But I mean, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the scramble. You can follow along by scrambling with white on top, green on front with his color scheme, or white on top, red on front with the Land color scheme. And this is what the scramble looks like from both sides. Alright, so in inspection, what he notices is that he has this pair right here with this edge and this triangle, and then he also has this other pair over here with this edge and this triangle. And so he has a couple options here, but what he notices is that this edge can match up with this pair with 2 moves by bringing this over here and then bringing this pair to match with it. And this triangle will then shoot down to this bottom side to make a pair with this edge. And this is a really clever solution here. So I guess rotating like this to here, he then does U, BL, and as you can see, that forms his large trap here with these 2 edges, this triangle, and then that other triangle shot to the bottom and matched with this edge, which is very, very nice. So now he has this pair here for his small trap almost ready to go. And then he rotates to this position here, and seeing that we have this white triangle on top, we just need to match it with this on the other side to make our small trap. So he does from this angle U prime, R prime like this. And finally L to form his first center there. So that's a 5-move first center. Very efficient solution, very clever with those triangles and forming those pairs like that. So moving on to the first 2 triples, he sees that he already has this triple completed down here as a result of forming that center. So rotating to this position to put it in, he does U prime, F prime like this, and now that's in just like that, which is awesome. Only 2 moves for that first triple. And then for his second one, he sees that he has this pair over here with this corner, and then he also sees this triangle, and this is the one that's going to match up on the other side. So he does R, U prime, R prime, and now he has his second triple formed. Something interesting to note is that he also had the same color triangle on this bottom side. So actually when he does the R move, he already had that triple completely formed there. Ultimately, in grand scheme of things, this is really a very minor thing that happened, and in fact, it's actually better that he went for this one. As you'll see later on in the solve, he just got nicer cases. So finishing that triple, he then puts it in the back with the BR move like this, and now his first block is done. So only 11 moves for this first block is really, really good. Obviously, he did get a little lucky there, but that's still really, really great efficiency. Okay, moving on to the second center. He sees this group of pieces on top here, and he sees that he can take this small trap and match it on the other side of this edge to get a correct color scheme. So he does R prime, U prime, R, U, and now he has this large trap done, and then R white prime to look at his other pieces now, and he sees that his last edge for the small trap is right here, and then here are the other 2 triangles. So now he does this solution to form this small trap. He brings this triangle up to match, R, U, R prime, and then he just needs to reposition this one to match with the rest of this. So U, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, R, U, R prime. And there is his second center. And he didn't even need to orient it, which is really nice. Alright, now moving on to the last two centers, and this is really, I think, what made the solve is these next few parts here. So he sees that he has this edge right here, and so he actually does a U move to put that into this middle slice layer here, because this edge does belong on this face for this center color. And then an R wide prime to check his other pieces out. And he has this pair over here, which he sees. And he can bring this next to this edge to form his large trap on this front side. So he does R wide again, R prime U, R. And there's his large trap done. And now R wide prime. And now he's going to finish his small trap. And as you can see, he sets himself up to a very nice case. So simple R, U, R prime will finish this. And also, noticing that we have this particular edge here and this one here, the centers are already going to be oriented when he's done. So he just does R, U, R prime. And both of his last two centers are oriented, no need to do any extra moves there. And now you can kind of see where this is going. Now that he's done his last two centers, this last bottom triple magically just forms itself right in front of us. And so now all he has to do is insert it into the slot. So he brings the slot down to the bottom and does the 4-move insert for this case. And then brings it back to finish his first two layers. So the nicest thing about this so far is just the straightforward aspect of this solution. There's really nothing better to do for these cases, and he took full advantage, which was excellent. So now he finally moves on to the last three triples, and again, this is where we get to be really excited. So he has this first pair already done on top, and now he's going to match up his second pair because he sees this triangle, and here's the corner for that, so he does a U, just like this. So now he has this pair, and he's now going to flip it, and seeing that the other two triangles are on this side, he's going to do a left-hand sledge, which looks like this. So he does L, R prime, L prime, R, just like that. And then a U prime, and that completely finishes his pair formation. And now we can see that we're going to get a CP skip. So all he has to do is rotate to here and finish the final flip with a U prime, BR, U, BR prime. And the puzzle is completely solved. This really does seem like one of the most perfect solves of FTO that's ever been done. It had the perfect amount of luck. No really hard cases, so he was able to be very efficient, but also no stupidly easy skips. Even though he did have some really nice finishes there into his last bottom triple, I still wouldn't really call it a skip. Again, an absolutely incredible solve.
You know, I'll finish the solve, I'll calmly do it, and it's like, yeah, I got a 19. Cool, nice. Next one. Right?
Oh my god! Holy sh! Holy oh! See, that's another story. That's another story. On stream. Oh my god! Yo!
The statistics of this solve are almost even crazier than the solve itself. In total, he did 53 moves in his solution, and 51 if you cancel out 2 extra moves in his last 2 centers there for recognition. But with 53 moves in execution turn metric, and again, 14.64 seconds, this gives a 3.62 TPS on this solve. This is insane. Dan is definitely known for his high turn speeds, and this is absolutely no exception. In fact, this one is honestly exceptional for him. And again, keep in mind that this is the average turn speed over the entire solve, including pauses and recognition and all of that. If you actually time his split on his E centers, which is his second center and last 2 center step, he pulls off an absolutely ludicrous 6 TPS. I really never thought about turn speeds ever getting to this speed in a real solve. So really incredible work from Dan once again, proving us that anything is possible with this puzzle. So I was fortunate enough to have a discussion with Dan himself about this solve and FTO in general, and here's a part of the conversation we had. And joining me now is Dan, the man himself who achieved this single solve. So, welcome. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on.
Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, I think this solve for pretty much everyone in the community has really been an emotional roller coaster, especially when it happened and we all saw it live. I'm eager to hear it from your end. What was going through your mind when you finished the solve and you saw that 14-second time?
Well, what's funny is I was finishing up a spiel I was doing on how if you want to get faster, you don't celebrate your fast solves. I just kind of went monkey mode on the solve, just started turning, and then next thing I know, it was like, what was it? It was just sledge to solve, and I look up and I'm at like 13, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just do the 4 moves. In the moment, there was about a millisecond where I was like, oh cool, I got a 14, and then immediately after it was like, whoa, wait a sec, that's a big deal.
Most definitely. And now that it's been just about 48 hours since you did that solve, how are you feeling about it now?
Well, I mean, I'm glad that I got it, and that stream as a whole was great because I ended up getting another 15. So I don't know. The problem is I can't cement myself as like the best in the world or whatever because it's single. I got 2 really good singles. Like, what does that matter? I got lucky twice. That's really all that's saying. I mean, I'm glad to have a world record back. I'm glad that Tyler has something to shoot for again. That he's not just gonna hold the top rank for the next 6 months. Hopefully, I can steal some more world records. I think this is just proving to myself that I'm not as rusty as I thought I was. I'm still in contention for all these top spots. So it'll just be just looking to where we go next after this.
Yeah, I definitely think this is only really the beginning here. So I know that the solve just went by so fast. It was such a short time span for you. Do you even remember any thoughts that you had while you were solving, or were you just kind of mindlessly turning, not even having any thoughts at all?
Well, again, I was trying to finish that train of thought. It was just, muscle memory, my brain just kind of going, oh, okay, this goes here. And I didn't really think about how, oh, hey, this is pretty good. Wow, that was like sub 10 centers. Wow, that's an easy last layer. It wasn't any of that. It was just, like, it only really set in when I went to do that last sledge, where it was just 4 moves to solve. That's when I really kind of, like, looked at it and was like, hey, that was pretty good, actually, Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't really thinking too much about the solve during the solve.
Right, but that's just it, because it kind of going in without having expectations really kind of can really, make an impact on the solve itself. So that's definitely something to note there.
And one other thing is, like, I think that's a big one, is because I wasn't going for single. That single came out of nowhere. It was like, I don't know, like 50 solves in? Not even? Okay, I'll just do some solves and have some fun. And without even thinking about, I'm going to get world record single. I got world record single.
Yeah, but there it is. The mentality really can change how it works. The other thing is, again, you're not just good with single solves. You've held average, world bests in all the categories, really, over multiple times. So, there was no, like, magic wand that was waved and you were automatically a sub 20 solver, right? In what ways have you been approaching your practice with FTO solving to really improve so much? And were you ever practicing with that 15-second barrier in mind, even for like the far off future, or how did you kind of think about that?
Well, so I'll address practice in general first. So when I started out, I think that realistically, you can get sub 30. Anybody can get sub 30 if they just do thousands and thousands of solves. I think anybody can do that. But there comes a point where you can't just get better by doing solves. There has to be a shift in mindset. Of course, there's these big mental barriers that you put in place for yourself, and some of them are harder to break than others. Breaking a minute, it's tough at first because, you lose a whole digit off of your timer, and the timer, the time itself shows up smaller, whatever, it looks cool. So it's hard to, it's a little bit difficult to get yourself into that mentality, right? You like look up at the timer, you're on the last step at 50 seconds and you choke.
Yeah.
And then you figure that out, right? Then all of a sudden you're sub-minute. Just because you did more solves, you learn how to avoid choking like that. You're more comfortable with sub-minute. The next big barrier is sub-30. And that's another one that just takes a long time to get to. You get to sub-30 and all of a sudden you see this 2 at the beginning. And it's this big deal because you've been working towards it. But realistically, you can get there with a bunch of solves. The problem is the sub 20 barrier is a much, much more difficult barrier. It requires, I think, 3 things. A good mindset, first of all, because without a good mindset, obviously you're gonna choke every potential sub 20 solve. You also need to be able to turn fast and get lucky. Like those are the 3 things that you need to do. And, you know, you can't have one without the other. And if you don't have any of those, you won't sub 20. Or if you have like one or two of those, you might not sub 20. As to the sub 15, I haven't been going for sub 15, to be honest. I knew it'd be the next big barrier that I'd have to break, or someone would have to break. Of course, I'd like to be the one to do it. Sub 15 was the next big barrier, but I haven't been going for it recently. I've honestly been going for sub 20 average. The 15 or the 14 actually just came completely out of nowhere. And I'm glad it did, because that grind would have sucked if I went specifically for the sub 15.
Yeah, that's something that I really think about too, is that it's almost better in a sense for you mentally to think that like you didn't have to, you know, struggle so hard with like trying to get sub 15, because I definitely believe that, you know, if you had really been trying to push for that, then you would have had a lot of close calls and it would have been pretty stressful and all of that. So to get the 14 just like that, where there's really no pressure on you, that is just really something special, I think. In terms of your single world record in general, right, you've had I counted this up, and from what I can tell, you've had the world best single on FTO 8 separate times in history. And of course, this partially could be due to the fact that you've been solving for a long time, and so you've been able to break the record for a while where there wasn't a whole lot of competition on your end. But even now, with solvers like Tyler and Michael and Aiden and so forth, some of the best in the world, you're still able to get these incredible singles. You seem to have a great track record for single especially. So do you think that this could be due to the sheer number of solves that you're doing, or maybe even your specific solving style for FTO, or, you know, are you just getting lucky scrambles?
Well, that's a good question, and I think all three of those things fall somewhat into play. But at the same time, there's people out there who have done more solves than me, right? There's people out there who have a higher average TPS than me, and there's people who have been solving longer than me. I think a big thing is the whole mindset thing, because I think any FTO solver can say that they have had a scramble that was really, really, really good, and that something went wrong, one thing or another, right? It turned from a potential like crazy, you know, PB by like 5-10 seconds, whatever, into just like, you know, 5 seconds below your average. I think everybody can say that for you know, one scramble or another that they've had. That's where mindset comes into play, because again, you can have a good scramble, but if you don't come into it with a good mentality, thinking that, you know, instead of getting nervous about it, you just focus and actually get the solve done as you would do a normal solve, that's when you start breaking records, whether it's your own PB or you start breaking world records. I think a lot of things come into play. I think my turning style comes the least into play, but of course you have to turn fast to solve a good scramble fast.
Absolutely, yeah.
The more solves you do, it's more chances that you're going to have a really lucky scramble. And I've just happened to have a lot of those. You have to keep that mindset, you know, and it's just focusing in on the little details outside of like, you know, puzzle modification, outside of hardware, and just hoping for a good scramble. Outside of that, it's just the little details that I think helped me get to where I am.
So, you know, even so, this is definitely still a monumental solve and a monumental moment in the history of speed solving, just because, you know, this 15-second time, I think in a lot of people's minds, you know, wasn't so much in the forefront really, because, you know, a lot of solvers were starting to get faster recently, and, you know, the focus was kind of like going for, you know, sub 20 for single solves, or even average. And so in that way, I think all the focus was kind of on that and not so much on the 15-second barrier. But now, you know, we realize it's here, and it's totally something that's in the sights of people now. Do you think that this solve will change the way people think about FTO in general and the future of speed solving, and in what ways could it do that?
You know, I hope so. Because right now I believe it's 5 people that have a sub 20 solve. And I think there's more people out there who have a lot of potential to do that. And I think that this is going to be the solve that makes them realize that sub 20 isn't the pinnacle of FTO. It's a very, very big achievement for anybody who's been practicing and grinding for this 10-second barrier where all of a sudden you're in the tens. I'm hoping that this 14 lets people realize that you don't have to push yourself to be the very, very best in order to get these sub 20s. I'm hoping that more people end up pushing themselves to break this barrier, get these times more often, you know. Hopefully the average FTO time becomes quicker as a result of this.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very inspiring words indeed. And I think it gives a lot of people, especially me, hope that eventually that we'll get there. So, yeah. Any last comments or thoughts about the solve or just about FTO in general that you'd like to say here?
Well, I mean, as always, I have to plug the FTO for WCA. I don't know directly or indirectly. Hopefully, the solve has some sort of impact on that movement. I don't know. Maybe someone sees the Twitch clip. Maybe somebody hears about it and wants to pick it up. Hopefully, this does something, and someone sees this, and that someone shows it to someone else. That someone happens to be able to be in a position to say something to the WCA or whatever. Right? I'm just hoping that as a result, directly or indirectly, this ends up growing the community to a better place and to a better future.
I hope so too, for sure. Being one of the main contributors of the community and start of it myself, I can say that you have also had a huge impact on it, and the community would be very different without your solving and what you've been able to achieve. So congratulations once again on the single. It is an incredible moment in our community and in the history of solving, and here's to the future, and here's for more incredible results.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm hoping that this community keeps pushing further and further.
Yeah, so thanks once again for coming on. Really interesting to hear your thoughts on this. Really great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I really want to thank Dan once again for that little interview there. Really cool to hear his whole perspective on the thing as the person who achieved this crazy time. Keep pushing those boundaries, dude. The fact that this solve was over 2 seconds better than his previous world best single makes me believe that this will last a very long time. At least until we get new hardware, that is. Thank you all so much for watching. Here's to sub 15 and beyond.